Okay, welcome to the week one go-to session. This is the first of four go-to sessions we will have this month. Keep in mind that there are quizzes associated with each of these quizzes. Um, so for those of you who are attending live, that's great. Once the session is over, you can go ahead and take the quiz. Let me quickly go to the FSO platform real quickly. When you take the quiz, like here's the week one go-to quiz right here. I don't know if I can see a preview of the quiz. Let me see. When you go into the quiz, you'll notice that the questions aren't there, right? If any of you have poked your head in, you probably got confused. You just see four fields here, and it just says put your answer here. That's because the quiz questions are contained in the session, right? So periodically throughout this session, a quiz question will appear, and that's the questions you need to answer in the quiz. And there's a reason for that. I know it's annoying to go into the quiz and not see the actual questions here, but that just sort of guarantees that people watch the session. Because even though most of you are awesome, there are people who would just, not watch the session and just try to answer the questions on their own, and that's clearly not what I want. Okay, so let me go back to my PowerPoint thingy. Okay, so this is it's partly an overview session, but we also have a lot of concepts to cover. So this is a really important first session. It will help you understand the first major assignment that's due this Sunday, because if you just rely on the assignment sheet itself, you'll probably be a little bit confused, but you won't be by the end of this session. But we will also back up and talk about more sort of global overview type things. Okay, so there's me. There's your instructor. I'm perfectly okay if you call me by my first name. I know that some people are uncomfortable doing that, and Full Sail does have a professionalism policy, and most of you probably know to call your instructors, Mr. or Miss. That's fine. I understand it. And in general, you should be calling your instructors that here at Full Sail. Unless your instructor gives you permission otherwise, and I do give you permission. So if you're comfortable calling me by my first name, that's great. If not, that's great too. Okay, but you don't offend me if you send me a message that says, David, I have a question about such and such. Jeff asked, will there be a recording of this? Yes, all these sessions are recorded because it looks like there are about 17 of you here for this session, which is great. That's actually a pretty strong turnout. But I have a total of, I think, around 50 students, so not everybody can attend live. Some people have jobs, some people have families. So yeah, the sessions are always recorded for later viewing. So whether you attend live or watch the recording, you still need to take the associated quiz. Okay, let's move forward. Here's what I want to cover. Just talk about the course in general. Get into this week's assignments. Talk about what we're working on all month, which is a public service announcement. So I'll spend some time talking about what public service announcements are, because they're deceptively simple. Once you understand what they are, it's very easy to understand what they are and move forward. But it does take some time, I think, for some students to really get a sense of what that means. So we'll get into that today. I want to talk about issues of audience, because that's also something that's really important and that we'll be talking about all month. And you need to get moving actually on the topic you'd like to work with all month for your public service announcement. And I'll give some tips about what sorts of topics work and which sorts of topics don't. And then we'll leave some time at the end for questions and answers, though you can also ask questions at any time, and I'll try to keep my eye open for it in the chat. Okay, so first of all, how many of you are signed up over at McGraw-Hill Connect? Okay, I know that there were some issues with the codes not being out. I got a lot of messages from people. Have people gotten their codes? Because last I heard that those were kind of being solved. Some people are saying yes, some people are saying no. If you can tell me in the chat if you've received like a latest update. For example, if you contacted FSO support today, or if you've been even in contact with McGraw-Hill, have you heard anything regarding updates about these codes? Okay, Brianna says they had to sign up for a trial membership. Yeah, that's actually a good technique, and actually I should have had this set up already. But let's go to the McGraw-Hill site. Okay, so McGraw-Hill Connect. Okay, I'm going to go in. Give me 2 seconds here while I click my way in. Oh, there was even a message right there telling that there's a problem with people getting access, because hopefully this gets solved very, very quickly. It's not a big deal if it takes a couple days for you guys to get the code, so don't panic. But yeah, hopefully it gets resolved really, really quickly. Okay, so let's go into our section. Once you do get access, you're going to see something that looks like this, and I just want to stress a couple of things real quickly. These black boxes here are actual interactive modules that you need to complete on a week-by-week basis. So there's one for week 1, week 2, so on. There's one that lasts all month long. Okay, you just need to complete these. Okay. I don't know what direction I want to go. They're a little bit. If you click on this, it will walk you through the steps of setting up the module, and you just need to complete it. So for week 1, it's about thesis and persuasion. The all month one focuses more on grammar, sentence structure issues. But these are easy points that you should be taking advantage of, okay? Because you just need to complete the modules. They're just graded on completeness. So if you complete the module 100%, you get all of those points. So those are sort of free points you can just put in your pocket. And I'll give my #1 tip right now, which is you can set yourself up to do really, really well in this class if you just take advantage of all the free points, or I shouldn't call them free, but they're almost free points that are just handed to you. So if you just do these 4 modules, I forget how much they add up to. Let's see. The first one is worth 3%. The second one is worth 4%. You know, I think it adds up to something like 10% of your overall grade. So that's 10% that's in your pocket if you'll just complete the modules. I've heard that individual modules can take anywhere from like 1 to 2 hours. It depends how well you've understood the information. You can't really race through the modules because they're adaptive, meaning if you're just clicking on whatever answer to try to race through it, you'll find yourself sort of spinning your wheels, and it will take you longer than it should to get through it. But for the most part, I've heard that it takes 1, 2 hours to get through an individual module. The all month one takes a bit longer, but not so much. I've had people complete the whole thing in under 5 hours, and some people it takes 10 hours, some people it takes 15, but that's why you have all month to work on these different modules. And I don't know how well you can see here, but I've set them up that they do have due dates and end dates, but they're all open. So there are some students who take advantage of, I've had students complete all of these in like the very first weekend. So they're done, they've got that 10%, and they can kind of move forward. So please take advantage of it, because they're easy points, and it's always frustrating when I have to give people zeros for not completing these modules, because they're really easy points. You also have a number of readings organized by week. It looks like a lot, but don't panic. For example, what is good writing? Let's click on that. It's going to take a second to load. But there's that reading, okay? I mean, most of them are pretty short. They're not all this short, but they're not terribly long readings. So please keep up with those. Hopefully, by the end of the week, I'm hoping before Friday, most of you get your codes so you can jump in here and start catching up on the readings and starting work on these modules. If I have to adjust the due date on this first guy here because of the book code problem, I can do that, so don't panic. But hopefully it gets fixed quickly. Okay, so there's that textbook stuff. Oh, the trial membership. I think that's a fine idea. You can sign up for a free trial membership even if you don't have the code. But I believe it only lasts for like 2 weeks, which means that halfway through the course, you'll be locked out of the site. You won't be if you eventually get that code and then enter in that code. The free trial membership will then switch to the full paid membership. But if not, keep in mind that the trial membership only lasts for a couple of weeks. So you don't want to rely on that for the entire month. Okay. Oh, and while I'm on the FSO page here, the best way to send me questions that you need an answer to is to use the little envelope icon up here to send me a direct message. Because what happens is if you send me a message this way, my envelope lights up. Okay? I was going to show it, but it looks like I'm all caught up for this section. If you leave me a comment under an activity, and by the way, that's fine if you have. I try to keep my eyes open for that as well. But let's say you were having trouble registering for the ebook, so you left a comment under this activity. Then what happens is I get a notification under this little bell here. The problem is that I get notifications for anything that anyone does. So if you sneeze, I get a notification. If you complete any activity, even if it's an ungraded activity, I get a notification. So it becomes a bit difficult to find your comments if you leave them under an activity. So if you really need a question that you need a response to, use the envelope icon. Okay, I don't know if I'm pronouncing his name correct, but Kayvon or Kevin says he can't hear. Other people can still hear me, I hope? Yes? I'm going to go ahead and type in the chat, can people hear me? Okay, I'm going to say people are saying yes, just in case Kayvon can't hear me. Okay, so let's get back on track. So those are my tips to doing well in the course. Take advantage of those McGraw-Hill interactive modules because those are graded. And take advantage of the other easy stuff. There's a professional emails quiz this week that's a breeze. Okay, so that's worth, I think, 5%. So take that easy quiz and take those points. There's another quiz in week 2, I think, that you can take advantage of. As long as you hand in assignments on time, as long as you stay professional, there's 10% worth of your grade assigned to professionalism, so that's another easy points. So there really is almost like 40% of your grade that you can just grab and be at nearly 100% if you'll just take advantage of it. Yeah, if people want to, I'm going to keep moving ahead. If people want to give Kayvon suggestions on what he might be having. Okay, he can hear me now. Okay, this week's assignments. Actually, I'm going to hold off on that for just a second because I need to explain some stuff before we can really get into this week's assignments. I've already mentioned one of them, the professional emails quiz, but there's another one which is a discussion. But we need to talk a little bit first about what we're working on this month in order to understand what that discussion entails. So let's talk about what we're working on all month, which is to create a public service announcement. Who can give me an example? You can either raise your hand if you want to speak out loud, or you can use the chat box below. But like when you hear those words public service announcements, what does that mean? Or who can give me examples? Because we need to figure out what a public service announcement is and what it isn't. May says infographics. Infographics can function as public service announcements. I'm not sure that on their own they always function as public service announcements, but they can certainly be used in that form. Olivia says to stop teen smoking commercials. Okay, good, great, right? Here in Florida, I'm sure other states have similar ones. We have these really intense, gross. I mean, they're not literally commercials because they're not selling a product, but yeah, they're communicating a message on an important issue, and they're asking people to do something. In this case, it's really simple, right? They want people to stop smoking, and sometimes they're targeted toward a very specific audience. There are some smoking commercials that try to target everyone to stop smoking, and then they can be more individualized. So some target just teens. That's an important thing to keep in mind too, because we're going to also talk about what sort of audience you're trying to reach with your public service announcement and what you want them to do. Okay, what have other people said here? Eric says, an ad designed to bring attention to a specific issue or topic. Okay, good. I would stress the word issue more than anything. Jacob says those commercials you see on TV all the time. Okay, yeah, technically commercials are designed to sell products. Public service announcements are a little bit different, okay? They're not selling products and they're not trying to push products. They're really trying to raise awareness, as Pasha says, about an important issue. So keep that in mind, okay? You're addressing an important issue. Now, the twist for this class is you're not going to be creating anti-smoking public service announcements. Or have you seen those Sarah McLachlan commercials? I just used the word commercial. Public service announcements, right, about animals. They always seem to be on late at night, and then you switch to another channel because you think I can't take this anymore, and then you come back and it's still going because it's really, really long. Okay, so those are public service announcements, but you won't be doing animal rights public service announcements or anti-smoking campaigns or like Smokey the Bear, only you can prevent forest fires. Your public service announcements need to be industry specific. When I say industry specific, I mean specific to whatever you're here at Full Sail to study. And if you wanted to real quickly, why don't people share with us in the chat box what you are studying here? Is it film? Is it recording arts? Okay, media, software development, game development, audio production. Okay, awesome. Computer animation. So whatever your industry is, and we can make it pretty broad. So whether you're in game design or game art, we would call gaming the broad category. Whether you're in music production or recording arts, music is sort of the broad industry that you're targeting. So for the public service announcements we'll be working on this month, they need to be industry related. They have to be very, very narrow in scope, and I'm going to help you with that in just a few slides later with giving examples of what sorts of issues work for this assignment and which ones don't. You need to remember that public service announcements are persuasive, right? So those anti-smoking announcements, they're trying to persuade people to stop smoking. Smokey the Bear is trying to persuade you to be responsible and not contribute to forest fires. And that persuasion is what I call a call for action or a call for support. Yes, you're educating a specific audience about an important issue, but you're not just stopping there, okay? Because then that would just be purely informational. And while that's important, a public service announcement ultimately goes one step farther and encourages actual action, okay? So stop smoking. Don't start forest fires. You're going to do the same thing, but it needs to be industry related. Has anybody worked in their industries yet? Like most of you will say no, but there are always some people who have. Maybe you had a small role, but you worked in a television studio, or you've been in pretty professional recording studios. Okay, Brianna has, Gerardo has. If you guys want to share what you specifically did, that would be cool too. If you have some experience, great. Maybe you can already start brainstorming about what sorts of issues you already know about in the industry. If you don't, that's fine. Okay, a big part of this course is to get you more aware of your industry. I understand that some people come here and they don't know very much because that's what they're here to study. But this course hopefully lights a fire under you to learn more about your industry. So that's something we'll need to get moving on pretty quick, which is to find a topic that works for your public service announcement. Even if you don't know your industry really very well. Okay, lots of cool things here. PR assistant for some fashion shows, assistant for a band, live sound at church. Okay, those are all great. And again, if you don't have experience, that's fine too. Here's kind of a glimpse of what we're working on week to week in this class. Week 1, we're just going to focus on finding your topic, okay? And you're going to try your hand at writing what could function, or hopefully what will function, as your introduction paragraph for the essay that you'll write at the end of week 2. And we'll also talk about coming up with a thesis statement. Yes, we're moving pretty quickly. By Sunday, not only do you need to choose a topic, but I'm asking you to actually start drafting the opening paragraph of what will become your essay, and to deliver a thesis. We need to move fast because, well, the course only lasts 1 month. And also, it's purposely designed to be a bit top-heavy, so the first 2 weeks are kind of intense. But then when we get to week 4 is largely empty. There's a go-to session, there's a quiz you'll need to take on that go-to session, but otherwise you have week 4 completely free to work on your final project. Week 2, we'll continue improving your topic if it needs improvement, and then you'll actually write an essay. There's only one essay in this class, so you're not going to be writing essays every week. There's a lot of sneaky writing. You'll be writing on discussion boards. You'll write the essay. There will be a peer review discussion board in week 3, which will require... So you'll do more writing than you think, but there's only one formal essay that you're going to write for this class, and that happens at the end of week 2. Week 3 is peer review, where you'll read each other's work and give each other feedback. And week 4, you're going to produce an actual multimedia public service announcement. I'm not going to say too much about that now because I don't want people worrying too much about things that are coming later, when we still need to find a topic. But yes, ultimately you'll produce, we have I think 4 or 5 different categories that the public service announcement can take. So you'll create a short film, or you can create a short comic, you can create a short audio piece, you can create a short song or jingle. So you're taking your public service announcement, which until week 4 was pretty much just in written form, and you'll be crafting something that's actually a multimedia project, and it's a lot of fun. It doesn't seem like fun when you're working on it, but really, the most enjoyable part is seeing the final results. Okay, so I'm going to take a quick detour, and I do want to talk a little bit about audience because audience is important to this class, not just in theory but in actuality. You might have taken English classes before where people stress the importance of audience, and yes, audience is important. But for this class, you'll see in real world sort of evidence how audience works. Because you'll have to think about who you're trying to reach with that public service announcement. So let's talk a little bit about audience. Okay, first I want to explain, just in general terms, what's called the rhetorical situation. It's often framed as a triangle called the rhetorical triangle. And this might relate to a quiz question, so you might want to listen up carefully here. But essentially, what we're talking about here in this triangle is that we have three elements: the writer, the reader, and the text. And here, text can be understood in the largest terms possible. It could be a formal written text like an essay, or it could be like the multimedia project that you'll create at the end of the month, or the things that you encounter in everyday life: a television show, a comic book, a film, a song. Technically, those are texts as well. So we're thinking about text in the broadest terms possible. And we can replace other terms here with broader terms well. For example, okay, someone who produces a song, you might not think of them as a writer, but in a way they are, right? They're writing that song, or they're writing that film. They're creating, or maybe creator would be the better term here. And reader is just, we could use the broader term audience. But if we think about it in these limited terms, writer, reader, text, the thing I want you to understand here is that the rhetorical situation simply means that if you change any one of these elements, it affects the other two. For example, let's go back to that example of the anti-smoking campaign. Okay? It could be a public service announcement that tries to target everybody. Okay? Everybody should stop smoking because it's bad for your health. Someone earlier mentioned that there are public service announcements that specifically target teens. Well, if your specific audience are teenagers and it's an anti-smoking public service announcement, this would affect the choices you make as a writer, and it would affect whatever it is that you're creating. And this seems like common sense. You would make different choices based on whether you want to reach teens than whether you're trying to reach everybody. And that's what I want you to understand. You change any of these three elements and it affects the other two. Okay? So here's quiz question number 1. What is the rhetorical situation? Basically, I want you to kind of just repeat what I went over. So easy question, okay? Because we just went over the answer. Let me take a sip from my drink. If you need to jot the question down or take a quick screenshot, that would be a good idea. Okay, and we're moving. We're moving. So we're talking about audience. And I've already stressed that different audiences have different needs. Okay, and this is going to be important because your public service announcements are not going to target everyone. So if you have a music-related topic, for instance, you know, there's a big difference between trying to address your topic to music fans versus the artists themselves. Or maybe the CEO of a record label versus, I don't know, music producers, right? Your issue might be broad enough that it could affect all these different audiences, but ultimately you're going to try to target one. So how do we reach different audiences in general? There are 3 major appeals, and if you've been able to access the textbook site, you might already know where I'm heading. They have fancy Greek words to describe them. And the first one is pathos, which is just a fancy word for the appeal to emotion. So if you think about those Sarah McLachlan commercials, or excuse me, announcements, public service announcements, pathos is working overtime in those. It's just an endless display of sad-looking dogs and sad-looking cats and animals in cages. The PSA, right, that stands for Public Service Announcement, the PSA is designed to tug at your heartstrings. And that should seem sort of common sense. Emotion is one of the most powerful tools that we can use. And it's one we can use as a writer of a traditional text like an essay, or if we're writing a song or creating a film or any sort of creative piece, emotion. Anybody want to show off and name one of the other two that are coming? Right? They all have fancy Greek. There we go, Jacob. Ethos. Sky says logos. Yeah, and I don't care if at the end of the month you don't remember the fancy Greek words. It's just important that you remember like that emotion is important. The exact opposite of pathos is logos, which is the appeal to logic or reason. So obvious examples would be, for example, if you use important facts or statistics to make your case, right? Emotion is powerful, but sometimes logic, actual examples, statistics, facts, quotes, those can be incredibly persuasive as well. So there's logos, the appeal to the appeal to the brain. Think of like Spock from Star Trek, or Data from Star Trek: The Next Generation. And the final one is ethos. Okay, the appeal to authority. I don't really mean authority in the sense of like a policeman, though that's the image I chose here. It's really the appeal to authority or credibility. And there's some blurring of the lines because obviously the way that you use the other two elements can help in these areas. But it's basically about creating the text in such a way that you, as the creator, the author, establishes trust or credibility with your audience. That can happen in small ways, the way that you word things, the way that you phrase things. It could be by the way that you organize things. But it can also mean that, for example, using powerful testimonial to help build authority or credibility. If someone's doing a PSA on forest fires, I mean, who's going to be more persuasive? A park ranger who has worked 20 years and you decide to quote from that person, or Kim Kardashian, right? Obviously, the first one would have power and add to the overall authority and credibility of the piece. That's ethos. It's about building trust and credibility with your audience. So keep those in mind, okay? Pathos, logos, ethos. So, quiz question number 2. How are the 3 means of persuasion intended to appeal to a specific audience? I should rewrite that question because I just want you to list the 3 means of persuasion we just went over and explain what they mean, okay? Kayvon, yes, these are the questions. There are 4 of them that you need to answer when you go back to the FSO platform and take the quiz. And you'll need to either write down the question or take a screenshot of it, because if you don't remember the questions don't appear in the quiz itself when you take it online. But basically, list those 3 means of persuasions, explain them to me. If you want to give an example of what it means, that's great too. But show me that you kind of understood what we just went over. Okay, and the tour is moving on. So we're moving. Are we okay? Can I move ahead? My first piece of advice, start brainstorming topics now. And I mean right now. So some of you are probably panicking, thinking, well, I don't know about important issues in my industry. I have no idea what I could target. I have no idea what needs awareness. Well, start researching, okay? If you know people working in the industry, you might want to pick their brains. If you've already made contacts here at Full Sail, you might pick those people's brains. You might even do something as simple as just using Google, right? I mean, we'll talk later about trustworthy sources versus not so trustworthy sources, but I'm fine with basic internet searches. So whatever your topic is, or whatever your general industry is, look for current issues, current debates, current controversies. Some of your topics, most of your topics work pretty well. Like, I'm not going to give examples because then people might just run with the examples I give. But like, there are a gazillion music industry issues going on right now. Gaming, another obvious one to tackle. Okay, so start brainstorming now. And I'm going to give you feedback on your topic. I'm getting ahead of myself, but one of the quiz questions that's going to appear is I'm going to ask you to present a topic in your quiz that you'd like to work on this month, and I'll give you feedback. And most of you, a lot of you, will need some help tailoring your topic or finding what sort of topic works. But we need to start moving on this now. Um, Michael Wood says, "What about songwriting?" I'm not sure what that means. Like, I have a lot of things to say about songwriting. I love songs. I'm guessing that maybe you were trying to suggest a topic, but I'm not sure what that means in terms of how that's an industry issue that needs immediate awareness. And I think the next slides get into some advice about topics. Sky says media communication seems so broad. Yeah, for your industry, Sky, you probably have to communicate with me about like what area of media communication you see yourself heading into. Um, that might help you. Okay, so if you're heading into PR, maybe there are issues related to PR that you could target. Um, that would probably help. Okay, so let's get into what sorts of topics work and which ones don't. It's going to sound harsh, but I do have some forbidden topics, topics that I'm not crazy about seeing. And I'd like you to sort of, I believe that people have really good common sense and they can sort of guess why these topics are not great for public service announcements. Any ideas why these don't really work very well? Like piracy is bad, so music piracy, or the piracy of downloading films, or censorship is bad, or Hollywood is unoriginal. I get lots of things like this. Okay, Pasha says cliche. Yeah, I think there's something there. I'm not sure if you mean too familiar, perhaps. I'd say that that's kind of correct. Eric mentioned something important that there, it seems like opinion rather than anything else. I'm reading the chat comments. Daniela, yeah, we still have a lot to cover, so hopefully things will be cleared up. We will get into the assignments that are due this week. Just a second. The first one I eliminate because we could agree that piracy is an issue. Okay, it is. I mean, would anybody disagree that piracy occurs? But I have two issues here. One is that piracy, I don't know, it's 2014. We sort of know that piracy exists. And can I be the mean instructor and say that when I get this topic pitched to me, piracy is bad, that it shows me that you spend perhaps all 5 seconds thinking about your industry? This one, I don't know, it's just too familiar. I'm not completely against the idea if you can do something interesting with this topic, but I just get so tired of seeing a dozen or more, music students or film students addressing the issue of piracy. I think most people know about that issue already. Um, Censorship is bad, kind of falls under the same category. Hollywood is unoriginal. Yeah, someone mentioned earlier in the chat that some of these sound like opinions, and yeah, that this last one doesn't really work because it's rooted in personal opinion, right? I get it. Lots of people complain about Hollywood being unoriginal. Or another big one I get is music today is terrible compared to generations past. But is that really a concrete issue that needs awareness and needs to be addressed? Or is that just your opinion on things? And that's something I really want to stress pretty powerfully right now. You need to find a real, concrete, provable issue that you can ultimately do research on. Because when you write your essay, you're going to need to include some research. And when things begin with personal opinion, that becomes really, really difficult. The way I like to put it is we begin with a real identifiable topic and then move forward from there. We don't begin with personal opinion and then try to convince other people that our opinions are correct. That's not a public service announcement. Okay, that's you just voicing your opinion. And hey, I've got lots of opinions too. I have lots of opinions on film, on music, but I would never make a public service announcement about that because that's not what a public service announcement does. Okay, let's use your spidey sense to figure out why these topics don't really work. Graphic design is important and is all around us. Or films are making such great technological advances. Or show production is an important part of the entertainment industry. Why do these topics not work so well? Pasha says that they're obvious. Okay. O'Neill says too general, too broad, not specific enough. All that is true. But there's one other thing that's sort of nagging about it. If you think about what public service announcements seek to do. I think Jeff is getting close at it. What concerns do they have? What issues? Right. Like, these aren't issues. Okay, graphic design is important. I agree. Absolutely. But that's not a public service announcement. Okay, that's not an issue. That's not a problem that you've identified within your industry that needs immediate attention and a call to action, right? Encouraging an audience to actually do something. Same thing with a lot of these other ones, right? Films are making such great advances. I agree. Yeah, Michael said they're statements. Yeah, films are making great advances. Okay. Same thing about show production. So these are leading down the path of becoming not persuasive pieces, but sort of informational pieces, right? Almost like short essays or eventually short multimedia projects that just inform on basic factual information. There's nothing really persuasive behind it. Now, it's not my goal here to teach public service announcements. That's not my that's not my broader goal here. What I like about public service announcements is that they're challenging because you need to find something that's very specific and narrow. You need to be persuasive. You need to be thinking about what specific audience you're hoping to reach, and you're ultimately asking that specific audience to do something. So within the structure of a public service announcement, you get to do all these really, really terrific rhetorical moves. And when you pick a topic like graphic design is important, you sort of don't make most of those moves. It's just you kind of creating the equivalent of a report. That's not what we're working on, reports. O'Neill says, why did I choose that picture? Oh, because I'm just giving cautions about things to be careful about. So be careful about topics that are just statements. And as we saw on the last slide, be careful of topics that are too rooted in personal opinion or that are just sort of too familiar. That might seem like I'm giving a lot of rules, but you'll be fine. All of you can find specific issues to address. Okay, so here's quiz question number 3, which is not really a question. You have until Thursday at midnight to take the quiz. So that means you have, what, roughly 48 hours to start researching and brainstorming and thinking of a topic that you might like to work on this month for your PSA. And I want you to propose that topic in your quiz. So for quiz question number 3, you're going to explain to me what your topic is. And don't just put like 2 words like, I don't know, streaming music, because that doesn't tell me really what your topic is. Give me some sense of what you're working on and why it's a specific issue or problem. And to help you out, I am going to give an example of a topic that could work for one of your areas. But before I do that, I have one more sort of massive, not massive, but information-based content to go over, which gets us into our discussion assignment, which is due on Sunday. Actually, I'm going to switch gears and show the assignment, which is, yeah, what this slide, week 1 assignment. You're going to choose your topic, find your thesis, and draft an introduction paragraph, okay? So let me get away from this for a second. Go back to our class. I don't have it open. Okay, so here's the first. You have this professional email quiz. Like I said, it's a breeze. Don't forget to take that by Thursday. But the main, you also have the first textbook Learn Smart Achieve module to complete by Saturday. Okay. But the big boy this week is really this discussion called Exploring Your Appeal. So let me go in there and bring up the assignment sheet. Okay, so here's the official assignment sheet for the first discussion, and it's got most of the reminders. It's due Sunday of week 1. You need to make an initial post that's going to be at least 250 words. Don't worry, you'll easily hit that 250 word minimum as soon as you see my posted example. Then you need to respond to at least 2 of your classmates. And all this has to be done before Sunday. So the discussion board's already open. You can already start posting. So when you think you're ready to take a stab at it, you can just jump in. And most of this you can read on your own, but here's the gist of it. When you're ready, you're going to post a short draft of an opening paragraph that could be the opening paragraph of your actual essay that you'll write for week 2. That also contains a thesis statement. Okay, and then you have some other things to cover, like what are 2 reasons you chose your topic? What do you think an audience could realistically do about your topic? and what questions do you have for your classmates. Okay, so this is all part of the original post. The biggest part is going to be writing that opening paragraph, an introduction paragraph, that hopefully, if it's well written enough, will function as the opening paragraph of your essay, so that you've already got one paragraph of your essay completed ahead of time. But before we talk about how introductions and thesis statements, we need to talk about those elements a little bit. Which means we're going to talk a little bit about essay fundamentals. Some of you know this stuff, but I'm guessing a lot of people could use a refresher, so let's get into that. First, let's talk about thesis statements. Okay? A thesis kind of acts like the roadmap to your paper. It typically appears at the end of that introduction paragraph, which you'll be writing and posting to this week's discussion board. And real simply, it's a sentence or two that defines your paper and tells readers where your paper is heading. Most of you have probably heard this before. If you've taken, English in high school, if you've taken another college level English class, you kind of know that that's what a thesis is, right? It's a sentence or two that appears at the end of your opening paragraph that sort of defines the terms of the paper. The good news is, for this assignment, the thesis is actually pretty simple, at least in terms of understanding how it functions for this class, because your thesis will just be a statement about what your topic is, who your audience is, and what you want your audience to do about your issue. So here's an example of a thesis. Okay, though video game companies have made strides in presenting strong, non-sexualized images of women, these companies need to be pressured to do more. Gamers need to write to game publishers and gaming magazines and let their voices be heard. Okay, so the topic is here. It's something about images of women in games and how they're not as appropriate as they should be. There's a specific audience, gamers themselves, right? The same topic could be addressed to the game publishers themselves. It could be addressed to a completely different audience. But I've decided to focus on gamers because that's the audience I want to target. And I capture what I want that specific audience to do. That they need to make their voices heard by actually writing to the game publishers and editorials of gaming magazines. You'll notice that what I'm asking a specific audience to do here, it's not some grand solution. I'm not going to fix this issue overnight, but what realistically can I ask an audience to do about this issue? To me, that seems to work best, but I'll give you feedback about your solutions as well. But that's the gist here, that in one or two sentences, you'll capture what your issue is, who your audience is, and what you want that audience to do. Okay, so let's talk about introduction paragraphs. Right, so this is the first paragraph of your essay. Introduction paragraphs, I think, like to do three basic things. First, they briefly define the issue at hand, because more development takes place in the body of the paper. But introductions are the place to at least briefly look at the issue and define it so that readers know what you're talking about. As we just stated in the last slide, introductions should end with a clear thesis statement, and ideally, introductions should find an engaging way to grab the reader's attention. I call these ways to grab the reader's attention hooks. Does anybody remember some of these tricks from high school English or another college level English class? What are ways to sort of grab your reader from the very beginning of an essay? What kind of moves we can make? Anybody remember what some of those techniques are? Okay, Gerardo mentioned the big one, asking questions. Yep, that's one of those techniques. Gerardo says opinions. Yeah, I'm not sure that's an actual technique or a move. I'm talking about an actual, asking a question is a good way to sort of grab your reader's interest. Anybody else remember? Stating a fact. Okay, good. Jeff says metaphor. I think there's something there. I'm not sure what that means completely, but I think I get it. Olivia's got a great one. Start with a narrative, which means like a short personal story or an anecdote. Brianna has another good one. Statistics, right? We can begin with an interesting fact or statistic that sort of highlights the issue or drags the reader in and makes them want to read more. Okay, great, awesome. Actually, I think you guys have covered most of them, which I have on this next slide. Here are some of the most popular hooks, right? And again, a lot of you already mentioned these. Beginning with an example or an anecdote. It can be researched or personal. Maybe there's something in the headlines that just matches perfectly what you're talking about. Great, use that as an example. Maybe you lived through something that relates, right? You have a personal story to share. Fine, that's great. You can use that as an opening move. Gerardo mentioned questions, right? You can begin with a thoughtful question. You can begin with a powerful quotation. You can begin with a dramatic or descriptive scene. I like to describe this as a sort of imagine if you will, or a sort of fictional scene. I mean, it matches reality, but it's sort of it's similar to the anecdote. It's just whereas the example or anecdote is real, the hypothetical scene is usually one that's invented, but done so skillfully and with such careful detail that it feels real. And as someone else mentioned, you can begin with an insightful or surprising fact or statistic. The thing I'll say here is that all these are awesome techniques. They're all terrific hooks. They become lousy techniques, however, if you just use them generically. So yeah, beginning with a thoughtful question is a great way to begin a paper. Beginning with a generic question is not a great move. So, you know, I read papers all the time that will begin with, not here at Full Sail, but in past classes I taught, you know, the student begins, what is love? Or what is life? Or what is school? And it's like, you can tell the person isn't really interested in the reader considering that question carefully. It's just a question that's being thrown out there because they heard somewhere that beginning with a question is a good move. So yeah, all these are great if you can use them skillfully to truly transition into your topic. But they become lousy if you just use them sort of generically. So let's look at an example, okay? I have already posted to the discussion board. I have modeled what you essentially need to do for the discussion. Okay, I mean, read through the assignment sheet. Don't skip that. Keep in mind the concepts that we've covered in this go-to session. But yeah, absolutely use my model as well. And as you can see here, the number one here is my actual introduction paragraph. And let's take a look at it. And see if you can spot which opening move or technique or hook I'm using. It reads, in March 2013, game development company Crystal Dynamics released Tomb Raider, a reboot of the long-standing popular video game series. There were significant changes to the game, shifting away from the block-pulling, block-pushing, puzzle-solving format that had changed little since the original Tomb Raider appeared in 1996. There were new controls and an emphasis on an open-world environment. But perhaps the biggest change came for the game's protagonist herself, Lara Croft. Gone were the short shorts and skimpy tops. Gone was Lara's unrealistic figure, small-waisted and big-chested. Instead, a new Lara appeared, one whose character design was less an adolescent boy's comic book dream and more a realistic portrayal of how a real young woman might actually look. And then comes my thesis. Though video game companies like Crystal Dynamics have made strides by presenting strong, non-sexualized images of women, these companies need to be pressured to do more. Gamers need to write to game publishers and gaming magazines and let their voices be heard. Okay, so there's my introduction paragraph. So, what technique am I using? Pasha says fact, example. Okay, good. Yes, absolutely. And that's really the connection I made in my mind. I knew that I was interested in this topic. By the way, social issues, if they're specific enough, can be great topics for a public service announcement. And some of you might be thinking, but wait a second, you said you don't want personal opinion. But if it's rooted in a concrete, real issue, which I think this one is. Think of the whole Gamergate scandal that rocked the headlines a couple months back. I mean, it is an issue that's out there. It may not be your issue. You may think that this issue isn't worth addressing or very important to you, but most, I'd say, mature people could agree that this is a topic that could be raised as something that needs awareness. And yeah, in my mind, when I was searching for a way to sort of get into this topic, I thought of the example of Tomb Raider. Awesome game, by the way. Really, really fun game. But yeah, what impressed me was that like this company had been yelled at for years, not just to improve its gameplay, but to improve, you know, the images that it sort of presented in the game. And it took a long time, but finally, with the reboot that came out in 2013, these issues had been addressed. So why not use that example as a way to transition into the larger topic of, hey, this gaming company has made great strides, and other people are making strides too, but we still need to do more. Okay, and I've addressed the other areas on the assignment sheet. So I list two reasons why I'm interested in this topic, right? I say that I'm interested in the social ramifications of gaming, that gaming is much more than what happens on the screen, that anything, a book, a film, a video game, can shape our impressions of the world. You might not agree with me, but okay, those are my reasons. I talk about what an audience can realistically do, and then I ask questions of my fellow classmates, which is you guys. Do you like my appeal? Should I be calling for something more ambitious than just asking gamers to quote unquote speak out? Do you like my Tomb Raider example, or do you think it's flawed? Okay. So there's an example you can follow. So you're going to do the same thing. The challenge is you're going to do all this by Sunday, which means you need to get moving on finding your topic. It means you'll need to think in your own mind how you want to write your introduction paragraph. You'll need to come up with a thesis. I've underlined the thesis in my example, and have all this in place by Sunday. Okay, I know it seems like a lot, but it's not so much. I mean, it's basically writing a paragraph and then addressing some other questions. And like I said, if you do a pretty reasonable job, then hey, one paragraph of your essay is already written. You can just hit the ground running when it comes time to write the rest of the essay next week. What else did I want to say about this? It just flew out of my head. It will come back to me. Quiz question number 4. This is the final question. I want you to identify specifically your intended audience. Remember, your audience isn't everyone. Nor should your audience be 3 or 4 different things. I have people who say, oh, I'm going to write about such and such topic, and my audience will be music producers, music artists, music fans, CEOs of record labels. It's like, no. You got to pick one of those. And don't just arbitrarily pick one of them. I mean, pick the one that you think you'd like to address. And if you do the work of, finding your topic and coming up with a thesis, which means thinking about what you want an audience to do about this issue, that will help you lead you to your specific audience. But I want you to start thinking about audience right now. And by the way, lots of topics work for this. And since quiz question number 3 asks you to propose a topic idea, I'm going to try to get that feedback to you really, really quickly. It's a little bit frustrating. The FSO platform is set up in such a way that I can grade your quizzes as soon as they come in, but you won't see my feedback until the quiz due date has expired, which is frustrating because if I grade something, I kind of want you to have access to it immediately. But it's just designed because other classes have quizzes where they don't want people to already know the answers and share it with one another. My quizzes don't quite work that way, but and you can also just send me a message. You don't have to wait for the quiz. You can run your idea by me, and I'll help you if it's not quite there yet. I would say the biggest issues are people. I said at the beginning of the session, the PSA is deceptively simple. Once you sort of get your brain wrapped around it and understand what it is, then I think it's kind of easy to move forward. But initially, and it's, by the way, it's perfectly okay. I don't expect everyone to have an awesome, perfect topic from the get-go. I'll help you, even frustratingly so. Keep working on your topic, keep narrowing it, keep improving it. But yeah, I'll see topics that don't quite work because they're leading down the path of being a report, not a persuasive piece. Or I'll see topics that are rooted in personal opinion and not really an identifiable, concrete issue. Jeff, yes, the audience has to be specific. I mean, for mine, for example, my audience is gamers, okay? That's specific. It doesn't mean you have to break it down to, 14-year-old boys who live in their mom's basement and play first-person shooters. No, it doesn't need to be that specific. It just means you're not addressing everyone. You're addressing one segment of who could possibly be affected by your topic. Oh, that was the last slide. Yay. Okay, so general questions. I know we've covered a ton, and I know I went through it pretty quickly because I try to keep these sessions to an hour. If I go over an hour, you guys start passing out. But we covered what public service announcements are. We covered audience issues. We covered introductions and thesis statements. We talked about what you need to do for the discussion assignment. Oh, I remember what I wanted to really, really stress. Okay, so the discussion board, you need to respond. Okay, after you post, right? Where's my post? There it is. After you post, you're not done. You need to respond to at least two of your classmates. Make sure that you're actually responding to the stuff on the page. What happens so often, that this is why I really want to stress this, is that people get caught up in the topic itself and not the writing issues. In other words, people will say, "Oh yeah, man, I love Tomb Raider. That was such an awesome game," and but they never address, "Hey, does his topic work for a public service announcement? Is his thesis reasonable? Is it persuasive? Um, the introduction, is it effective? How could it be improved?" So these are the things we're supposed to be targeting. I don't mind if for a sentence or two chat a little bit about the topic or something. That's fine. But make sure that you ultimately get to writing issues, because this is what's important. If someone has a topic that doesn't work, right? You see someone come up with a topic like, "Man, music today is just so terrible. It's nothing like it was 20 years ago." You need to find a polite and constructive and helpful way to let that person know that, hey, that's not quite what a public service announcement does. You still need to find a better topic. So keep that in mind. Yes, it's due Sunday night, all parts. Okay, so you're going to post your introduction with your thesis. You're going to respond to at least two other people, all by Sunday. So today's Tuesday. We have time. Yeah, this assignment, you're posting it to the discussion boards. You're going to find this activity here, 1.4, online discussion, exploring your appeal. Click on it. I don't know if you guys just need one click to get into the discussion board. I have to click on a second thing here, class discussion, to get in. I don't know what it looks like on your end. And then you're in. Just says, can we watch the recording later to refer back to the questions? Yes, absolutely. It will take some time to process the video, probably about an hour, but I'm hoping that before 10 p.m. Eastern, that this video should already be posted. And they're always found. Let me go back to the main page. Okay, they're always posted in this section here, which is called Go to Training Archives. Right here. So that's where you can find the link to the videos. Any other questions? I'm not getting too many questions about what we covered. Okay, someone raised their hand. So let's try this function. Danielle, I'm going to unmute you. If you didn't mean to raise your hand to speak out loud, you can just let me know. But you can go ahead and ask your question if you want. Barely. I can hear you. Let me shut off my air conditioning. That's a cruel joke, by the way, that I actually have the air conditioning on here in floor. Okay. Yeah, I think so. What's your specific area of study though here at Full Sail? Okay, okay, yeah, no, that's fine. I want to make sure you weren't here to study, like, I don't know, recording arts or. Yes, I'll approve that. I think you'll still need to do work in terms of, if not this week, then ultimately researching, because I think that will lead you toward a more specific answer in terms of what you want a specific audience to do about the situation. because public service announcements, yes, they inform and they educate, but they also ultimately deliver an important message, and you'll have to figure out what that message is. But yeah, right now I think even if it seems broad, I think it's broad in the right way in terms of it's an issue that is important and needs to be addressed. So I would say get moving on that. Right. No, no, it's good. I think I complicated it too much. Yeah, it's good. I'd say start working on it, and I can help you down the road if I think it needs to be more specific or more tailored or something like that. But definitely, yeah, I would pursue it. You're welcome. Let me mute Danielle. And actually, Danielle's example and my example that I posted to the discussion board, social issues can work well. Like social issues work well. Health or safety issues, if there's a health or safety concern in your industry, environmental issues, tech issues work fine. And really, just even Googling things like current debates or current controversies or troubling trends, right? It shouldn't be like a trend like, oh, I don't like this the shoes people are wearing. It shouldn't be something that opinion based. But hey, sometimes there are troubling trends that need to be addressed in a specific industry. So those general categories tend to work well. But yeah, you need to, everybody, not Danielle. Everybody needs to sort of get moving on doing basic research on just finding a topic if you don't have one in mind. Michael, you don't need a link to sign for this class. I don't take attendance. I mean, ultimately, all of you, whether you attend live or whether you watch the recording, you have to take the go-to quiz associated with this session. So that's attendance. Jacob says, do we need to wait for you to give us feedback to write our introduction paragraph? No, but it's a good idea to get my general response. Like I've given Danielle the go-ahead. I've said, yes, that sounds good. Yes, that sounds like an issue. Start moving on that. So yeah, but I'm not your. I don't live with you. I can't. I can't stop you from writing an introduction paragraph. Where do we go to find the go-to questions again? They're contained in this session. They were presented at various points throughout the session. So if you didn't catch all of them. I mean, if there's someone who's been here from the very beginning and you just forgot to jot down a question, I can show one again. But I'm not going to go back to like the very beginning of the session and lecture all over again so that you understand what's required of a question, if that makes sense. Yeah, May brings up a good point too. There's a writing center here at Full Sail. I forget what the address is, but you can go to Full Sail Connect, and there's a link there. You get a GPS point for attending the writing center. So yeah, they can help you as well. Any other questions? Um, Michael, I don't know if you mean where you find the quiz. The quiz is just here. Here's the week one go to quiz. As I mentioned at the beginning of the session, when you go in to take the quiz, you won't see any quiz questions. They won't appear because again, most students are great. Actually, all students are great, but some, they might be crunched for time, or they might think, well, I don't want to watch this week's session. And if the quiz questions appear in the actual quiz, some people are tempted to just try to answer them without watching this session. Quiz question number one was this guy here. What is a rhetorical situation? I spent a little bit of time explaining what that is, so you basically just have to summarize what I covered. Will the quiz be unlocked after this session? Isn't the quiz already open? I hope. Or is it? Has anybody tried to take the? Well, nobody's tried to take the quiz yet. It opens at minute. Okay. Okay. Thank you for alerting me to that. We need to open that now. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording of this session.